I watch quite a few music producers, whether it be EDM producers, beat makers, or something else. A lot of the time I see a lack in optimized workflow and especially organization. Looking at you, FL Studio, dubstep producers with your disgusting project files. So I decided to think of the best organization and workflow tips that I've currently got, starting with making yourself a template. This is easily the best tip I've got here for both organization and workflow. If you want to cut your organization time into little bits, you have to make yourself a template. I mean, this is obviously going to allow you to spend less time doing menial organization tasks and more time producing. Let me give you some ideas based off the template I made. I've got my categories organized both in the mixer and the playlist. This means I always know where any given sound is located, rather than having to look for it in a labyrinth of a playlist like a lot of people might. I also always know where something is routed to, as it pretty much always goes to its categorical bus. Here you can see I've got my sidechain set up already, including separate automations for my drum and synth sidechain, which I do a bit different for each. I've also got some master effects set up. I usually use these in the buildup, and I've got send mixer tracks right where they need to be, so I don't gotta find an empty mixer track if I want to use a send. These are also routed to the bus. You can even have plugins on any mixer track you want. To make a new template in FL Studio, just put whatever you want in a new FL project, save it to your downloads or something like that, and move that file to this file directory. It'll then show up here if you want to load it as a new project. You can download my template in the link in description. Moving on. Learn hotkeys. This is obviously going to speed up your workflow. I don't have to tell you that. But if you haven't already, you should definitely familiarize yourself with the hotkeys of the functions you use the most. Here's some I use, starting with the F functions: F6 for the channel rack, F7 for the piano roll, F8 for the plugin finder, F9 for the mixer, and F10 for the playlist. You can also use F12 to get rid of anything, including open plugins. Control+L allows you to route something to the selected mixer track, though I use something different mostly for audio files. If you know the track number you need to route to, right-click the target track selector, press T, and enter your track number. If you gotta add a playlist track, right-click and press I. I use this to give myself a place to put in automations. I should mention, if you right-click something in this box of options pops up, any letter with the ellipses underneath, you know, the little dots, will do that function if you press the corresponding key. Control T to add playlist markers, Control A, Control C, and Control V to copy all MIDI and paste it into another synth. If you turn this button off, single key presses will equip playlist tools. Anything else you want to use a hotkey for, hover over it and you'll see the corresponding hotkey in the hit panel. In FL Studio, you can make presets for any plugin. Do you find yourself making the same thing in a plugin over and over again, making the same preset all the time? You can save some time by just saving the preset. In the plugin options, save preset as. You can also add folders to do this for more organization. Also, sub tip, wherever you see this symbol, you can drag and drop this to copy it somewhere else. This goes for plugin presets, piano roll files, and even mixer track presets, usually under the file options of any given option menu. Put automations under your sounds and lock them. All the time I see these ugly ass project files with their automations on the other side of the planet from what they're affecting. So when you solo a sound, you gotta look for a needle of an automation clip in a haystack of a playlist. So this is a super easy solution. Under your sounds playlist track, right click and press insert one, or press the I key. Then put your automation in this track and shift click the mute/solo button. This means anytime you solo a track with your sounds, all automations will not only be right beneath it, but they'll also all remain on, so you don't have to worry about finding them and enabling them. This is my last major project file organization tip, so for the love of God, anyone who sees this video, no more of this crap, alright? Your project files deserve better. Moving on. Create your own plugin categories. If you're an EDM producer like me, you've got a ton of plugins. Sometimes I can't find what I'm looking for, so these categories are super helpful. Unless I look in the MISC category where I've put every plugin I have. To be real, I can't find anything in there, so I'm gonna create a new plugin category to put all the pitch-related effects. Open the View browser and go to the Plugins category. On the plugin database, right-click and open. This is where all your plugin categories are stored. I'm gonna enter the Effects folder. Within this, I'm going to create a folder called Pitch Effects. I'm then going to locate all my pitch-related plugins. Take all these files with the same name and move them into the intended folder. Do this with all the plugins you want, then close FL Studio. When you reopen it, all the plugins will be in this new category, both in the plugin picker and any add plugin list. As you can see, I've also done this with my guitar amps and distortions. If you want to add any new plugins into any category, after putting them in your DAW, go to the desired category in the plugin picker and click it. Then, in the plugin options, click Add to Plugin Database. This will show the plugin in that category along with the preset used when you added it. Next up, saving as new version and rendering to audio. This is more of a CPU saving trick. Being a dubstep producer, I always have like a billion plugins in my project files, and that absolutely tanks my CPU. In the past, this has eventually gotten to the point where my UI completely breaks and I can't even use the project file anymore, which is very annoying. Nowadays, I regularly use this technique. To do this, wait until your CPU usage is pretty bad. Then click File Options and Save as New Version or Control N. This will create a duplicate of your project file. You can then render as much as possible to audio audio and delete the plugins that you rendered. This will absolutely save your CPU. The benefit of doing this is that you can always go back to the original project file to access all the plugins that you used, while still having low CPU usage in your new project file. As you can see by some of my song folders, I do this all the time. Organize your sample. First off, this takes absolutely ages. I remember about a year ago, I organized like all of my samples and it took hours, but I don't regret it. Now I don't have to look through like 100 sample packs to find multiple different samples because it's all categorized. Of course, you can customize this however you like, but let me show you what I have. The main thing I use samples for is drums and effects. Let's take a look at the cymbals. In here, I've got crashes, hats, and ride cymbals. In the hats, I've sorted closed and open hats. I've also sorted the 808 style crashes out of the acoustic ones. Looking at the kicks, I've sorted them by genre and type. The same goes for the snares and claps. And in the SFX, I've sorted by type as well, even separating the noisy and low rumbly impacts, called noise and kick impacts respectively. I've done this kind of thing to every sample I've got and almost every sample pack I've downloaded besides the ones in the need to categorize folder. Setting up auto backups. This one's super easy. Press F11, go to file settings and change the backup location to save to the project data folder and change the autosave time to your preference. Then go to project settings and change the ask for data folder setting to when starting a new project only. This means whenever you start a new project, you'll see this pop up. Enable the create new project folder setting and choose a folder to house everything. This means whenever you open a new project file and choose a folder, it'll save the project file there, as well as the folder holding all its backups. This means if FL crashes without you saving, you'll be able to easily access the auto-saved files and restore your work. Make patcher presets. This one's a pretty huge time saver if you use similar processing chains regularly. This one's a similar tip to the plugin presets one, but you can do this for however long or complex a series or parallel or hyper splitting chain you want to. For example, if you've ever watched one of my track breakdowns, which most of you have not, I use a preset called typical growl processing all the time, honestly on like all of my basses. It's a patch I made a while ago combining two other patches because I always use the same processing on growls, hence the name. This preset has 3 OTTs running into 3 more OTTs that I can enable with this button. That's then going into a fat rack, which is just every distortion plugin you've got at like 10 to 20%. This Serum Effects is just an optional hyperdimension, and I've also got an optional formant shifter. Both are controlled with knobs. Then all of this is just for the EQ that I've customized to cut or boost exactly the frequencies that I typically need. I've also got patches for my guitar and bass tone, and now I don't got to spend any extra time making all these. You can also get Patcher presets online that are basically just plugins. Patcher is super cool. Speaking of Patcher, my last tip. Use Patcher for your sound design. This tip is definitely geared more towards bass producers and like sound designers than anything else. There's so much cool stuff that you can do with Patcher. I'll make like a couple videos on it eventually, but let me tell you some of the immediately useful stuff. Parallel chains are super easy in Patcher. It allows you to add any plugin and decide exactly where it's routed, and you can route any audio or MIDI output to any other audio or MIDI input. There's also the ability to modulate parameters with the various LFO, envelope, and formula options, which I use all the time. A whole lot of the complexity that's in FL Studio is within this plugin. So if you want to get more complexity and control over your sounds, abuse Patcher to high hell. If you want to see how I abuse Patcher, watch one of these track breakdowns. Or maybe you want to learn about these cool free plugins, right? Go on. Click one. Now.